Hi, I'm Chris Lee, and this is Virtually Speaking. Joining us today is Sasha Strauss, perhaps the most compelling thought leader and expert on brand in the world. As his resume will show, transforming major brands, the likes of PayPal, Google, Disney, Adobe, and more at the C-suite level on consumer and marketplace brand messaging, employee onboarding, internal organizational messaging on purpose, and bringing the various silos within a company to work together. Sasha focuses on how PR, marketing, and customer relations all work together in a single, focused, and aligned way. And years ago, in his Rise of the Herogen keynote, which has been viewed online over 1 million times, accurately predicted and defined the new world, the new normal we now live in. Sasha is an expert in leveraging emerging technologies, understanding what the consumer wants and how they think, and defining an organization's internal message and purpose, as well as getting that message out to the masses in a relevant way that resonates. Sasha teaches brand strategy for the past decade to graduate students at the MBA programs at UCLA, USC, and others, where he remains one of the highest rated faculty members. So please join me now with the incredible Sasha Strauss. Well, hello, Sasha Strauss. How are you, sir? Thank you for joining me here on Virtually Speaking. How's it going?
So good. Glad to be here with you. An honor. Considering all the guests you've had, I feel lucky to be here.
Well, thank you very much. I've been very much looking forward to having you. You know, every time we talk, every time we have a conversation, it for me is so entertaining because, you know, we have a lot of energy, we have a lot of enthusiasm about what we do, but I always learn so much, you know, and it's not an easy conversation for somebody to be able to convey what it is that you do and at such a high level with the brands and the companies that you've worked with over the years. It's a privilege because, you know, people pay a lot of money for this kind of service, and I don't think everybody understands what brand strategy really is and what it means and why it's necessary. It's not advertising, it's not PR, it's not campaigns. It's what is it? Tell us a little bit about what brand strategy is.
Well, I appreciate that you're asking because in the truth, people tend to think that brand is anything with a logo, anything with a campaign. And what we teach in brand strategy is that, well, that's fine. You could do something today or this week, but what brand strategy defines is what you're going to do this year or for the next 3 years. Think about a workforce. A workforce doesn't want a new ad every week. That's just not how you engage employees and get them to participate. Whereas brand strategy helps you figure out, what do these people want for their careers? How can you build an internal dialogue inside your organization so that these people feel like, well, this is the right place for me. I want to advocate for it. I want to recruit my friends to work here. When customers call, I know what to say and how to say it. That type of communication cohesion builds strong companies. And that takes, you know, that's a multi-year effort. That's not a weekly program.
Is that really true that every company out there really knows what their message is for the next year to 3 years or even beyond that? Is that really the case, or are some
No,
people kind of making it up as they go?
you can totally win by making it up as you go along. No question. You could totally win. The problem is that your heart can only last so long. I mean, think about it. It's frenetic. It's intense. You're Sunday night, you're like reading tweets and trying to decide if they should go live. There's a place for that. There is absolutely a spirit and a place for that. But what I deal with and what my C-suite clients deal with is really, all right, what are our consistent actions? What are we going to say over time so that it compounds and equals an understanding that can't be knocked off a ledge? Think about like, let's say you're in a category with really spirited competitors. So the competitors are like trying all these risque things and trying to be distracting. All right, well, they're spending lots of time and energy, lots of money on media buying, lots of training, et cetera. Well, how many times can they do that? And think about their audiences. The audience can only receive so much. We can only be refreshed so often. And so, to answer your question, the smartest businesses, the smartest nonprofits, the smartest religions, the smartest political organizations, they are thinking about long-form human engagement, not just the frenetic short-term stuff that happens to be advertising.
Very interesting. And one of the things that interests me about it is, to me, it's also, isn't it sometimes a little bit about the vibe, like how we are, what our energy is, how do we care, kind of what's our angle, and the consistency.
Yeah.
You talk about that. throughout everything that somebody sees of your brand. So talk a little bit about that kind of that personality, as well as not only the message, but also like what you're going to get and how you're going to feel.
Well, I appreciate that you said that, because often we think about business in only business terms, units sold, right? But in fact, we're selling things to humans, or humans have to sell our things. And so they need to relate to who we are and why we matter. And so in the branding business, we say, well, let's not leave that humanization to chance. Let's decide how we want to portray ourselves. Let's decide what type of actions we want to take. Or more importantly, let's decide what type of talent we want to recruit. So you'll notice if you talk to your friends, ask them, like, what's your favorite organization? What's your favorite brand? They might talk about the product, but as soon as they've gotten past the product's features and functions, they've got into the spirit of the organization, the energies that they portray. And that's what builds lasting relationships. I'll actually put something out here for you, which is every business, every nonprofit, every religion is going to make a mistake. You're going to misfire at something. You're going to donate to the wrong thing. You're going to hire the wrong person. And so what you need is resilience. Well, humans do not forgive Excel spreadsheets. It's a binary conversation, on or off. Whereas when there's a humanization of the business, when you talk about the people in it or the audiences that you're trying to serve and what type of people they are, you actually earn forgiveness. You earn a little bit of space to not be perfect, because humans aren't perfect. And so it's kind of interesting, even though we're trying to build these huge commercial empires, you think about these huge commercial empires. Let's take Tesla or SpaceX. Elon Musk has way more followers, has way more response participation, way more engagement, because he's a human and he's saying inappropriate things and he's trying risque things. And people are like, oh, I don't like it, but I like that he's a person and that's someone I can connect with. And I'd ask you, like, on the spot, who's the CEO of Volkswagen? Who's the CEO of Ford? You have to look it up, because they're void of personality. You don't know what makes them emotionally engaged. And so my point simply is, brands need this. If you're going to sell to humans, or your humans are going to sell what you offer, there has to be persona built in.
Yeah, that's great. So there's actual research on this, I take it.
Oh my gosh. For a century. There's a century of research about how humans need help connecting with choices. And the fastest way to connect is via a human, or human characteristics, at least.
Yeah. That's amazing, and that's awesome that you really hone in on that. And I know that you've worked with some of the biggest brands on the planet, and one of the ones I really like when I think about you is PayPal, because I remember back in the day, and speaking of Elon Musk, I remember back in the day that people were afraid of PayPal. I was afraid of PayPal. I didn't want to put my credit card through the computer and trust this entity to have my information. And so they overcame that. Now everybody uses PayPal and Venmo. But back in the day, I remember that was a real hurdle for them. So did you come in at that point, really?
So funny story. I haven't shared this publicly, but when we started working with PayPal, all of their marketing was very explicit and descriptive about product, feature, function. In fact, the number one most used phrase when we started working with PayPal was safety and security.
Okay.
Now, what we figured out was that by saying safe and secure, you're actually telling the audience you should be concerned. Like, oh, let me bring it to light.
Right.
Well, ever since we did our work, PayPal's voice has completely changed. It only ever is pay or get paid. Everything PayPal says or does is simply about you either paying someone or getting paid by somebody. And we don't have to mention security once.
That's amazing. So what did they do in order to convey that? What was the kind of four-pronged approach that they took to spread that message and to connect with consumers?
So let's get into the classwork here. So basically what PayPal did was that they grew either organically or inorganically. They either built stuff or they bought stuff, right? And they smacked it all together because it was all about financial transactions. They assumed that everyone would understand. Small businesses would understand, consumers would understand. What we proved through our research was that people don't. They don't know what PayPal is. They don't know what I should be using it for. Should I trust it? And when we helped them figure out that that product portfolio was an internal collection, that externally it could be simplified, that practice is called brand architecture. Brand architecture just basically means make it easy for audiences to buy or easy for salespeople to sell. That's that rationalization and the simplification of the product portfolio. That was the work that we did for PayPal. We took hundreds of international products and simplified them down to, again, as I just said earlier, stuff that you use to pay, stuff that you use to get paid. And that simplification made it far more accessible.
Yeah. And at some point, I wonder when it was, but at some point their sales and the usage just must have skyrocketed exponentially.
Yeah, the mobile phone was really the catalyst.
Okay.
So yeah, 15 years ago, people weren't transacting on their mobile device. They didn't have internet connection everywhere. But as soon as we became accustomed to being on our mobile screen more than our desktop screen,
Right.
PayPal's history was made.
And then the app was so easy to use. And then they said, let's roll out Venmo, because they also rolled out Venmo, correct?
Yes, they actually bought Venmo,
Okay.
and we recommended that they did not rebrand it as PayPal. What we figured, of course, was that the young market did not want, dare I say, their father's payment platform, which is fine, And instead of judging them about it or saying, no, you need to learn to love PayPal, we actually kept Venmo separate, and still do, because it's a completely different transaction behavior. It's much more social. It's much more smaller payments more frequently, and that needed a different brand, and that's why we kept it separate.
Yeah. And one of your most important points, which is also a keynote, which is also a methodology that you've spoken about for as long as I've known you, is called the rise of the Herogen. And the interesting thing about it is when I first heard you describe it to me years ago, I had no idea how to understand it. I kind of basically knew. I remember I called a meeting with you where you could just literally explain it to me. And I walked out of the meeting. I pretty much understood it. But the interesting thing is you were foretelling the future. You were literally, talking about this Herogen. The rise of the Herogen was the kind of new world that we were living in, the new world of digital, the new world of, how we're connecting with each other, which is so important to obviously what you do in branding and brand strategy. So tell us a little bit about how that, talk that you've been giving and that way of doing things that you've been doing with your company for so many years, how that leapfrogged, or at least all became very much, obvious to everybody once the pandemic hit. I feel like when the pandemic hit, you were like, see, I told you, now we really need to adopt this stuff. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
So I appreciate, I'm not a see, I told you guy, but I'm really happy to share. So this is what happened. Let's say about 5 years ago, I got a call from my client at Google basically saying, we've produced the most robust set of data on consumer behavior ever. We can't explain it. We don't know how to talk about it. Can you help us explain it? And through my analysis, I concluded that through these transitions, the way that we learn, the way that we connect, the way that we save data, everything, the way we shop, that eventually it's going to change human psyche from the way that it was to the way that it is now. And what you're representing, which is so funny, is that 5 years ago, I traveled to 25 countries presenting that research and that work to all the world's largest companies, hand-to-hand combat, presenting it to them. And everyone said, like, this feels kind of futuristic. Like, I don't quite understand it yet. What do you mean that people are not going to be attending class in class, that are going to be doing remote classes, and they're going to be learning dynamically on their mobile device? That just seems so strange. Or what do you mean that workers are going to be connecting to the cloud and using all of their interfaces remotely? Like, it wasn't that I was like prescient in imagining COVID, but the technologies were there, and in certain marketplaces, people were adapting.
Right.
So I'm so happy to say, Chris, I was just presenting to my graduate students at UCLA Anderson last week, and I thought to myself, what would really, really bend their brain? And so I decided that I was going to present to them all that research and the rise of the hero generation. And just as you said, COVID sped that up so fast that it is as accurate as I possibly could have dreamt. If I ever wanted to write a speech that would have been futuristic and accurate, wow, it worked out. And so I'm so happy to say that that speech continues to be a game changer and is still one of my most popular.
And it's also the way you run your business, right? I mean, when you meet with a new client, you tell them, this is how we do things. It's based on this research. It's based on this premise, which is how we need to take advantage of and connect with everybody through all of these tools that we now have and that are now becoming even more rapidly adopted by everybody.
Well, what we help our clients realize is that although they want recognition, they want status, it's hard to create that from zero. You want to go where your audience is. So if someone says, should I advertise on Facebook or should I promote on LinkedIn? And my question is, well, is your audience there? And so, yes, what we've helped our clients figure out is not only defining who they are and why they matter and where that should be discussed, but helping them understand how to meet the new behaviors where they're at. To give you an example, we have some big clients in healthcare, some very, very large healthcare systems. And pre-COVID, we were helping them try to realize that, look, telehealth is real. It's coming. You need to do this. And their inclinations were, well, it's risky and people aren't really comfortable talking about their private life on their mobile device.
Right.
And what we were able to help them figure out was that 7-year innovation plan that they were going to implement. COVID warranted a pull the lever, let's do it right now. And so now what we're seeing our healthcare systems do, figure out, oh my gosh, we used to only interact with our patients when they came into this box. Now we're interacting with them daily. They're doing their Internet of Things blood pressure cuff. They're doing a Internet of Things thermometer, and that data is coming to our caregivers inside our facility. So the healthcare system, which is in America, competitive business, went from we're only going to see you once a year or only come in every 3 months to now we're talking every day. And that transformation has changed healthcare, and it will never go back.
Yeah, and it's happening across many industries as well. And what I wonder about is, do some customers not even know what their message is? Do some customers not even really customers of yours, not our customers, but people who run businesses from huge companies to small businesses owned by one person that has 5-10 employees or maybe 20? Do people really struggle with what their message is?
They do. I'll say most people struggle. And the problem is that we're all too close to it. You're too close to your business. I'm too close to mine. And so we can't see the forest through the trees. What brand strategy helps you do is it helps decouple your daily work from the intention you want to create. What do you want your business to be able to do? And so that requires research. I'll give you one simple example. I talk to nonprofits and corporations every day, and I say to them, talk to me about your competitors. And often they'll say, they'll either spike their competitors, oh, those guys, they don't know what they're doing, or we don't have competitors. And it's so funny. I don't mean to call them out on it, but I just want you to see that people could say that. They could come to that conclusion. What we help them recognize is that there's learning over there in them hills. Yeah. There's so much to understand from the best practices of these institutions. And instead of looking at them like you want to beat them, look at it like, wow, they're doing research that I could not have done. So what we end up bringing to executives that feel like they know what they know or don't know what they don't know is just help them with market data, market insights, contemporary reflections. Another simple example is the concept of social listening, where you don't go into social media to post. You only go to collect data, to connect and understand how consumers, your target audience, is communicating. And that's a data set that you could never have had access to before. I mean, if I said, Chris, tell me what 2,000 bankers feel, you would have to be like, oh my God, let me launch a 1-year research study, right?
Right.
Well, now I can go into Clubhouse, into the bankers channel, and listen to 2,000 bankers talk about their most contemporary challenges. You can see that's hot insight. I mean, anybody who, you can imagine what you can do with insight that fresh. So that's what a brand strategist helps our clients do, is it helps them get out of the forest, identify the trees, and understand the actions that they need to take so that they can stay a market leader.
And it works also from the outward messaging to the consumer and the potential customer, as well as internally, right? Does it have to match? In other words, we're talking about to ourselves, to our employees, to our leaders, to our workers. Everybody's got to buy in on this idea. And that's also the idea we're pushing out. So when somebody calls in, all of the messaging they've seen in the marketing and all of the branding that we've done is real. And there's somebody there actually who lives that and breathes that. How does that work?
Well, okay, I love what you just described, but it's not so pure. It's familial. It's not the same. For example, investors, you can imagine what they want to talk about is probably a little different than what the employee base wants to talk about.
Okay.
But you're right. They need a common thread. Why are we here? What do we hope is going to happen to the world? What makes us different and like our competition? And so there needs to be consistency. That way, when the CEO is giving a speech at a conference and employees are in the room, not saying, what is she talking about? They're saying, yes, that's what I believe. And that way, when they go pick up the phone to do customer service, they're relaying that same notion. But to answer your question, it actually comes down to training. One of the most profitable sectors of brand strategy, it's not the research, it's not the strategy, it's not the design, it's the activation, where you activate it for investors, activate it for executives, activate it for the workforce, activate it for the resellers. It's unbelievable. And it makes the brand a living, breathing entity rather than just a PowerPoint deck and an executive computer.
So how does it get activated? What's the activation process?
The activation process is, first of all, where did this come from? Sounds crazy. People don't want to see the shiny object. They want to see where you got it from. And so activation for investors, employees, and executives is, look what we learned. Look at what these consumers were doing. Look what these peers in other markets were doing. Isn't this really, really interesting? And then show where we're not being clear. Given these market actions, where are we not being direct? Where are we not being explicit? Where are we not being intentional? And by simply showing them that there's better to be done, they often open their minds to the idea that I'm willing to listen. So the next thing, once you've showed them all that research, the next thing is to train them, but with kindness, not a mandate. Not here are brand guidelines and you must comply. But here's tools that might help you sell better, Salesforce. Talk to us about your sales process. Great. Well, that means that if we put this slide and that slide and this slide together, you're going to be able to tell a consistent story. Or, hey, investors, your investment does well when people hold on to the shares. Okay? Trust me. So let's help people hold on to the shares. Let's help them have a durable, connected relationship with your business so that they're not buying and selling quickly. And so what does that mean? Well, that means at the Investor Summit, there's a big discussion about the brand. How did we make it? Why did we make it this way? What does it mean to you? What should you say? Here's a sales sheet. Check out this website. And by giving people all the tools they need to do their jobs or live their lives, they love the resource. And when they see that it shows up the same on YouTube as it does at the Executive Summit, they start to say, wow, now this feels like a community. Now this feels like a consistent experience. Now my shares are going to be worth more. My job is going to be worth more. That executive is going to come and want to work here. And so they just stated, there's the research and then the showing of the research. And then there's the tool making and then the training against the tool making. And that's how you truly activate a brand.
Is there a somewhat simple example that you can give us, maybe of a current, example of where this has worked, maybe in the pandemic or coming out of it with something like a company that you can easily talk to us about?
One I know I can talk to you about because we're discussing it on podcasts regularly is so nothing I'm about to share do we share on other podcasts. This is especially for you, Chris.
Okay, good.
The executives are talking on podcasts, and so they're out there communicating. So therefore, it's okay for me to share this. So give you an example. One of our clients is this, as I mentioned earlier, is this huge healthcare system in Colorado. It's unbelievable. 30 hospitals. Can you imagine? I mean, what an enterprise that is? 30 hospitals.
Yeah.
About 20,000 caregivers working day in, day out. So it was a hospital. Caregivers care, they do their job, they're destined to be healthcare givers. Is that enough? No, it's not enough. Why? Because people in Colorado live a certain lifestyle. Because people in Colorado maybe have a different view on healthcare when it's in remote neighborhoods versus in big cities. For example, in a remote part of Colorado, you don't go in for regular checkups. You go into the hospital maybe once a year. Whereas in the big city, you might have an appointment on the odd Tuesday. And so what we had to do for Centura, this will blow your mind. We took a Winnebago, we emblazoned it with the brand story, and we went to all of those hospitals. And we met with caregivers coming in and out. They came into this private Winnebago where they got to tell stories about how they got into healthcare, why they chose this organization, how they work with their coworkers every day. And then we took all those videos and created a montage that now shows at all employee meetings. That is the intro to conversations about where you work and why you work here. And now what we're working on, favorite part, is that now every single new employee has a brand onboard. So I know you need to sign this legal paperwork to get paid, But guess what? We want you to spend just as much time learning about the history of this healthcare system, learning about the future of this healthcare system, and learning about the other 21,000 caregivers. And that in itself is inspiring people to stay connected. COVID was stressful for the healthcare industry. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They lost the number one revenue stream, the ER. The emergency room is the number one revenue stream for a hospital. Okay. Well, when people are not driving, when people are not riding motorcycles, when they're not getting out because of COVID, ER revenues declined. And so this healthcare system had to struggle and figure out, how do we keep our employees passionate? Well, brand. That brand story inside and outside made them feel a part of a contiguous whole. And that's how that organization has endured.
Awesome. And it also reminds me that you've talked about how sometimes within any size company, the separate different silos feel separate. They feel like they're not interconnected. Tell us a little bit about what it means to what does brand strategy have to do with silos and people working in one side of the company, not relating to the other? I mean, how do you get them connected and why does that matter?
Usually it's a misunderstanding. Often people talk about verticals and silos inside of business as fiefdoms, as people defending their territory. But the fact is that if you're in silo 1 and I'm in silo 2, we both could sell more if we collaborated, right? We sell more of 1 and 1 more of 2. So let me give you a real example. There's an incredible biotech firm here in Los Angeles called Amgen. Just incredible. And they have, let's call it, I'm just going to say 7 business units. And each business unit is a multi-billion-dollar business unit. And through our brand work, we were able to figure out business unit 1 is amazing. Business unit 6, unbelievable. Business unit 5, I can't believe what they do. Problem is they didn't understand each other. And so what was the branding work we did there? We helped business units explain themselves to business units. Why? So that there's less data loss, signal loss, more cross-selling, more integrated planning. And imagine if that saves 3% on the bottom line for a billion-dollar organization, we're talking about huge capital savings. And so that's a perfect example. Consumers never saw the internal branding at Amgen. It was just you and I going to a meeting and saying, Chris, what business unit are you from? Oh, you're from Vertical 2? Can you give me the spiel? Great, I'll give you my spiel, my 5-minute spiel on my business unit, and that will help us collaborate and create common goals and new revenue.
So there is, in those scenarios, an opportunity for one silo to say to the other, you know what, I had a guy on the phone who really didn't need what we had, but I could have sent him over to you. Is that
perfect?
What it was?
Perfect. So there's the referral thing. My favorite part about this is really about solution selling. So we know that, for example, McDonald's doesn't make money on the hamburger. They make money on the fries and the soda. Apple doesn't make money on the iPhone. They make money on the app in the App Store. Okay. So that's the point here, is that businesses really need to not sell verticalized, although they need to speak to verticals. That's aerospace and that's healthcare. They hang out differently. There are common ingredients and things that need to be cross-sold. And so what brand strategy helps you figure out how to do is figure out where are their common values and when can we sell a set. My favorite set example is Microsoft. They taught us this a long time ago, PowerPoint, Word, and Excel. Oh, let's sell them as a suite. Right? Okay, boom, now you buy the 3 together. Or Adobe Creative Cloud. You used to buy Photoshop, you used to buy Illustrator. No, now you buy the suite. And what you end up doing is end up trying new products. And so therefore, these verticals that were very resistant. I'm telling you, at Adobe, they were my client. The video team did not hang out with the graphic design team, who did not hang out with the enterprise team. But once they understood that there was opportunity to solution sell and cross sell, they became one and the same.
Wow, that's great. So the small business owner doesn't have silos, doesn't have a board, doesn't have investors. It's just a family and 20 people or maybe 100. But, let's say a construction company, for example.
Yes.
Do they really can they take advantage of this brand strategy?
I love this question. It's part of why I run my own business. We have Fortune 10s as clients, but we also have mom and pop. We have a company right now called San Diego Land Care.
Right.
It's basically a solopreneur who has contractors and they build out backyards, going through a brand strategy process. Well, okay, maybe this business only has a perimeter of how far a truck can drive in a day. Okay, fine. Well, are there other land care specialists? Yes, there are. How are they communicating and in what channels? Let's find that out. And who is our audience and how do they tend to refer us business? Oh, they say that we make waterfalls and plant nice trees. Interesting nugget. Let's take that into consideration in our communication plan. So, in fact, brand strategy is better and faster for small to medium businesses. You can do much more and be much more regional about your outreach. Imagine being an international brand. I mean, so many factors, so many cultural factors to consider that it's really daunting. Often an international brand is a lowest common denominator brand, where an SMB can be just exactly
Right.
what their buyer needs.
And do you do a little bit? It feels like to me like the CEOs and the owners of these companies can actually come out of working with you having been trained, like trained to smile more or be more fun or be more empathetic sounding in the messaging that we're given. Like, is it almost like a little bit of a coaching as well in that you're
Yeah.
kind of educating them on how to reach out in every way we reach out?
Yeah, we call it personal branding, and it's not about making them something that they're not. It's about
Yeah.
celebrating specific things that make them what they are. And so instead of walking into a room as an executive and being everything you were, who you were in college and after, think about who your audience is, how do they want to relate to you, and what stories can you tell that are true. And that intentional communication helps people trust their leaders. And so we have many, many clients that are only paying us for personal brand strategy for the leadership.
Wow.
The future of the organization is its leaders. But if those leaders don't know who they are and why they matter, no one will follow.
Amazing. So speaking of leaders, speaking of leadership, I know we're coming through this pandemic now. We feel like we might see the light at the end of the tunnel, as a nation, as a city, as a world. But in a lot of ways, leadership may have failed us. In a lot of ways, maybe we need to rely on ourselves as businesses, and maybe we need to rely on ourselves to make our own income and not, hope that we're going to get it from a gift or a stimulus payment or a loan. I think a lot of people are realizing that they are taking matters in their own hands, and maybe that's the way we get through this situation, is the creativity and the passion for business and understanding what consumers need now is really what matters. Is that, do you share that with me?
I do. In fact, I had a very productive year during COVID giving keynote speeches. And my most fire speech is called "Only Business Can Save Us Now."
There you go.
Yeah. And it totally like tilts your head and you're like, what? That sounds like capitalism. And what I basically help people understand in the presentation is decouple business from capitalism. Business is a social construct. It's an international dialogue. It's empowerment. And when I say business, I don't mean empire. Business can be mom and pop. It could be an Etsy shop. But the point is, today, we all now have the tools to sell. Before we didn't. But because now everyone is mobilely connected and has digital payments like we described earlier, technically, grandma can sell knit hats. And she is. People don't realize this, but more people create an income on Etsy than the entire National Football League and all of its employees and all of its teams. Think about all those teams. Think about all the referees, everything. Think about that number of people. More people are creating a livelihood on Etsy than the entire National Football League.
Wow.
And what does that say to you? Wow, this wasn't possible before. And these people are literally, as you're suggesting, saving themselves. They're creating income streams. They're creating connection to their core audiences. And this is what inspires me right now. Truly, I'm so motivated by the opportunity for each individual to be a business if they want to. And that's what I think is going to save the future.
Yeah, and companies are also having to, even the smaller to medium sized to large companies, I think everybody is all having to listen more to, and they're able to listen more.
They're able to. Yeah, that's the trick. Yes, everyone has to listen more. There has to be more focus.
Yeah.
But guess what? Cheap and easy and fast. It doesn't cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to know who your audience is. Spend a couple hours on Facebook watching them behave, watch a couple of their YouTube videos, and listen in on a Clubhouse room, and boom, you've got market data that I couldn't have bought. It's so hot and fresh.
So tell people about Clubhouse, because I know this is really a brand new thing. I've heard you mention it twice in this discussion. Yeah. I know a little bit about it, and I know there's some other interesting similar apps and companies coming out. that are
Yeah.
going to compete with Clubhouse. But tell me a little bit about why it's important and what people need to know about it.
Well, I've been researching it nonstop, much like when TikTok came out. I was using it every day to understand how consumers were interacting with it. But to simply explain Clubhouse, it's the first kind of social media where it's not about perfectly written words or perfectly taken pictures. It's about this. It's about what you and I are doing right now, but with no video. So it's only audio and it's more relaxing. You can let go a little bit. You can doodle while you're engaged in the social media.
But it's live.
It is live. It is live, but there's something about it being like a phone call that makes it. There's permissions. There's you can make mistakes. You can him and ha. Whereas when you're doing a live interview like this, you and I are trying to be like all perfect. Well, that's not how Clubhouse is. But to simplify it, it looks like a very simple interface. But as I've joked about it publicly, it's really just a user experience over a conference call that anybody can be invited to. You want to invite 1,000 people to that conference call? Go ahead and do so. And I was just doing one, but I think you know this, but I've been teaching on simonsinek.com. And so he just joined last week. Yeah, and so it was amazing. On Sunday, he decided to have a session and 2,000 people listened to him talk for an hour and a half. You got to ask yourself, that's got to be good for business.
Yeah.
I mean, where else could he have had an uninterrupted dialogue for an hour and a half where his voice is the only voice? Yes, wealthy people can pay him to give a speech at a conference, but even then, it's big stage stuff. It's like, what do the executives need him to say? This was only Simon in its purest form. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of these. My favorite part about it is that you really are sitting in rooms with just anyone. For example, obviously I'm not a woman and I'm not an astronaut, but I have been in so many rooms of female astronauts. It's amazing, where there's Russian astronauts and Japanese astronauts talking about their training and about their vision for the future in space. And I'm like, where could I have got this before? Nowhere.
Where could they have gotten the feedback before from across the globe? That's for them invaluable.
Both sides. They wouldn't have been able to have gotten the feedback, and we as audiences and fans would never have been able to pay attention. We wouldn't have had access to it. Or our space agencies would have been too specific about what they have to say and not say. Whereas this is, again, an open, casual dialogue, unrecorded theoretically, and space for people to express and be heard. Kind of astounding.
So can people just create their own conversation whenever they want, or how do people find out about the conversations they want to get in on?
Both. You can have one haphazardly, like I'm throwing up a chat, who wants to join? Anyone who follows me or is linked to me will be notified, or I can pre-schedule it. That's what Simon Sinek did. He pre-scheduled it for 11 a.m. Pacific time on Sunday. And so people plan their lives around it, and the app is very intuitive. It will automatically populate your calendar with an invite that you click the link, it opens the app. Yeah, it's kind of astounding. You're getting both, but what's really cool is you're only going to be exposed to topics and rooms based on who you follow.
Right.
That's informative. It's really interesting. It really helps open up the conversation, because if I just sign on as Sasha, professor, brand strategist, I'm only going to get like marketing rooms. But because I follow astronauts and politicians and all these folks, I'm getting access to these rooms that are just lighting up my mind. I swear it's crazy. I was playing with my kids outside this weekend, had an earbud in, listening to a very intellectual conversation, totally immersed with my kids. That was never available to me before. I couldn't hear such interesting contemporary content and interact with my kids. But because the platform is so simple and only audio, it works. And I feel informed and connected.
And so it's really market research. It's really just
for me,
free market research for anybody who wants to listen in on people talking about what they do.
I think people are tired of me saying that in Clubhouse. There's big rooms where people are like, how do you blow up on Clubhouse? And how do businesses and brands succeed in Clubhouse? And I just keep saying back to them, listen, just listen to these people talk. Listen to these conversations unfold. You'll learn more about your audience's behavior via this channel than any other online survey or classic focus group could ever have told you.
Amazing. Well, Sasha, this has been absolutely awesome. And I feel like, again, as usual, we've only scratched the surface, and an hour just goes by so quickly with us. Leave us with a little bit about, I know we touched on this earlier, but leave us with something a little bit about how you feel about the future. The roaring 20s, we've heard that is coming again out of the last pandemic. It came, in the 1900s. I'm just feeding you that, hoping that
Yeah.
maybe that's a part of it. But even like in the next 6 months to a year, we're at the beginning. We're actually, I can't
Yeah.
believe already almost at April here, but in 2021 and 22, what are you thinking about? I know
Yeah.
you're optimistic and I know you're excited. Tell us about what's on your mind.
Thank you for asking me. This is a very personal question to me because I am an optimist. I work hard at it. It's not like I wake up every morning and look at the sky and say, wow, I work at this.
Yeah.
I make a concerted effort. And so one of the things that I am absolutely inspired by is this. Prior to COVID, when I talked to my clients about corporate social responsibility, the responsibility of a business to do good and not just do well profitably, they always were like, okay, fine. Like, okay, fine. I know I have to do it. Maybe my employees are going to ask about it. Not anymore. You don't get to be successful and productive post-COVID without also doing good for the world. And so it's going to be really interesting that even the most commercial of enterprises is going to be asking themselves, okay, and how do we tell our employees and our customers that this work is not just to create cash for the shareholders, it's also to create revenue for the world, contribution to the planet, et cetera. So my most enthusiastic response to your question is finally, corporations large and small are going to be required by their audiences to talk about how they help the world as they grow their business. And that makes me more excited than I've been in branding in a long time.
Do you agree with the notion that companies, no matter big or small, should think of themselves these days as a media company?
Yeah, it's hard because we're all controlling our own media channels. We used to, right, there used to be TV production studios, and now you just hold up a phone and you've got a 1080p high resolution video. I do believe that every business needs to understand that you need to be known to be bought. You need to be known to be donated to. You need to be known to be hired. Okay, you got to control your being known. Well, that requires media, and whether that's Instagram media or television interviews or a podcast, that's media. And so every organization, including nonprofits, needs to be a media producer. And that's why I agree with your assertion.
Good. Yeah, because I mean, it's becoming more evident that like if you're not doing any of this, then you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, what are you doing? I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
If you're not getting out and communicating, I can't know and love you.
Exactly. Well, I know and love you. We know and love you. Whenever anybody hears you speak, they just the reviews are always through the roof, and you just always deliver. And you really care about each audience. You care about, just like with your company, you care about the companies that you're dealing with, and you do a lot of research and a lot of preparation for every move you make and everything you say and everything you suggest. So that's really appreciated and not lost on me and on the people I've booked you for, and who I know love you as a thought leader and as a speaker. So thank you for all of that work. Thank you for all of that caring. And thank you for, being positive out there in a world that needs that kind of voice from people like you.
I appreciate that. I'm an emotional person. And when I get up on stage, this is the stuff that got me in trouble when I was a kid because I was so affected by my classmates, I couldn't sit in class. When I'm standing on that stage, I am feeling that audience and I am only who they need me to be. And I think that's probably why it's worked so well.
Absolutely. Well, very likable guy and very, very smart guy too. So that doesn't hurt.
I don't know about that last point, but I'll take it if you say it.
I say it. All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been great.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful rest of the year. God bless, and really appreciate you.
Hey, I appreciate you and asking me to do this. And I have to say, I think you've done over 50 of these or something over the last year, some incredible amount. And each one of them is a mind melter. The speakers, I feel lucky to be in that set. So
thanks
for asking me to do this. I appreciate it a lot.
Absolutely. You're welcome. And thank you again for doing it. And take care. Have a good one. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, Chris. Thank you.